This is the Interstice podcast. I'm davetrippin. Whether you're tuning in on Spotify, Apple iTunes, here on the channel, thank you for doing so. Really appreciate that. Get all the contact info out of the way at the beginning. If you do want to get your questions answered in the second half of the podcast, please do feel free to write me at davetrippinon@gmail.com. And I think you'll find that usually, with great certainty, your question will end up on the podcast. Beyond that, thank you very much. Special shout out to all my Patreon supporters. You guys are amazing, means the world to me. And if you're not already supporting me there, if you would consider doing so, means the world. I really, really appreciate it. So now, let's get into it. So I was thinking of this. I was making my dinner tonight, and it came to me, what should I discuss? What would be interesting? And I had this question. In fact, kind of the whole nature of this, before we get into the second half of the podcast, will be on this idea of questions. And I'm hoping to, in this time, maybe discover a few answers. But knowing why and kind of like the purpose behind this questioning, I think is really important, and it's kind of a cool concept. So the question is, why are you doing what you're doing? Right now, in the next moment, in the next moment. I think that's an important question, because all of our behaviors are either interlinked entirely because they're ultimately moving towards something or many things, or they become, why I think this is so important, is a kind of vague satisfaction. You only know not where you're going, but you are vaguely satisfied with the direction, and that is sufficient enough to move you from event to event to event in your life. And I say, or I think, that it's really important to ask this question, because you'll find that you may think that you are more determinately heading in a direction than you actually are if you really pose this question and look at it honestly. What I mean, for example, could be if you think, oh, no, I got a direction. I don't know why you asked me that. I know immediately when you ask that the answer is this. And I thought about it for myself, for example. So I thought, well, what am I doing in relation to, let's say, my health? And then when I really thought of it recently, most of the way that I have eaten well recently, because I know that eating well is so important if you want to be fit, if you want to get low body fat percentage, so much of that, eating healthy, needs to be with great consistency. And I thought, when I really asked that question to myself, there's been so many moments recently where I'm vaguely satisfied with my effort, but when I really think, I would never have done enough to have actually moved truly nearer that goal that I had set for myself, that the calorie deficit had never been there consistently. If I did want to put on more muscle mass, that's pretty much better. When I asked that question, I was like, no, you are going to the gym more frequently. There was a lapse for about 5 days here, but that was fine. And then I thought it was cool. That's to lay the groundwork, the foundation to this whole conversation. I thought then it's important for me, I think, always you take stock of things. Like, why are you doing something? And I thought, well, why am I doing a podcast? And I thought, well, that's directly related to the channel. And then I think, why am I doing the channel? And that was a really, really, really important question. I think it's actually the crux, the most important question I could ask, because unless I stake this out for myself, I have vaguely made it the most important thing in my life to me, at the cost of many, many things. So you better damn well know why it is that you chose this thing that you have, if not seriously appointed, vaguely appointed as giving your life a lot of meaning. And I think it's really cool to ask this question, and why I bring it up and how maybe it's useful for you is that it's never too late to, if you are vaguely doing something, to stop doing that and take at least, maybe you've done a couple things well and in accordance with whatever you so desire to truly progress, and you change direction. We're never static. We're usually moving towards or away or sideways, something of those variations. And so I thought, well, I want to be creative. That's why I made the channel. I found that something in my deepest core cries out to be creative. It wants to do that. Another way of putting this is that visually, I see cool shit and I want to make cool shit. If you want to bring it out of the clouds and just talk frankly and honestly, what is it? Most basically stated. I love incredible media. I want some connection with that. Well, what's another reason? Well, you have access to it. You can actually participate in this, and it's not beyond your means. For example, if I wanted to do something else, perhaps I wouldn't be able to do so, like be a Formula One racer. I don't know. Maybe if I found a way I could, but that defeats my point here. But there are certain things that, okay, I can do it because the possibility to participate, I'm in a situation to do so. But I think it runs deeper than that. But then I thought, is that like truly directional? Is that truly purposeful? Just that you want to create? Because then, so is everything only serving that purpose? Because when I make this channel, well, there's so much to consider in terms of interpersonal reaction. And then if all I'm doing the channel for was to be creative, then I felt as though it cheapens every interaction that I have, because every interaction I then have, if that was the sole purpose of the channel, is a means to an end to advance that goal. And so that means anytime I've spoken to you, anytime you sent me an email, anytime you left me a comment and I commented back, it's always been to further that goal and that goal alone, if that were the only goal. So I had to ask the question, why do you interact with people? Is it only for that goal? And it made me realize that these things can be so multifaceted. It opens the treasure box and you start to pull out more interesting things, and that you can ask seriously what you're doing. You can really want to know why, and are you doing things that truly further your interest in that thing that you want to do, but that it doesn't only need to be that one thing. You can identify as many things as you want to be furthering, and perhaps it came from a vague interest, but then that is responsible for you finding yourself in a number of situations. But then you can go through each of them and really ask the question. And I think it's worth doing because it grants meaning. It gives purpose, and that the satisfaction that you get from purposefully moving towards things is really, really satisfying. So I thought, okay, well, so what do I really want to do? What am I really trying to accomplish when I interact with you? I thought, probably I want to make that person's life better. And I want to make it that if I get to follow what it is that I love, I want to allow them to do the same thing. And then it got me to thinking, okay, well, that's fine. That's one thing. But you have to understand that everybody has these personal needs that are a little bit different, all the colors of the rainbow, each individual little fluffy snowflake. Not calling anyone a snowflake. That's just a fun, metaphor we're going to use here. So what it can then be, I thought, okay, for each person, then they're going to be individual. So what are you trying to accomplish for each individual, as opposed to just giving a blanket statement of, well, I want to help them reach their individual goals. I think it would be, if I really cut out like a mission statement, what is it that I'm trying to do? It doesn't matter if it's in a video, if it's in a podcast. I think it would be actually to not just help people further their goals, because that was kind of a foot in the door to begin with. When I talk about this idea of a foot in the door for getting in Japan, that was a way that I could start to be creative and easily connect with people, because a lot of people were asking the same questions that I did when I came over here. But then what else could I do aside from answer that question 50,000 times of, if you are a non-native English speaker, can you still teach in Japan? I thought, well, what about awakening in those people, if they hadn't already, then furthering it more, this idea that you shouldn't just pursue this interest like you may have to come over to Japan. That's one thing. But like I've always tried to undercut all of my videos, nearly all of them, when I'm speaking to you about some kind of topic that is Japan-centric, it's to appeal to this fact that what I may say and my thoughts towards it are usually Japan-centric, that they could correlate to almost any other topic in your life. So talking about, for example, to give you a hard example, so it's not just airy. When somebody asks about, I'm really, really nervous about coming over, how do I deal with those nerves? Well, then I'm trying to speak on the topic of dealing with nervousness, but cloaked in this idea that it's directly we're talking about Japan. However, to bend ears, but then you don't need to be doing that once you start speaking to people a little bit more and they start seeing you as more than simply the guy who I'll ask about teaching over in Japan. And I think more and more when I speak to people, that's the thing that they're interested in. Granted, I've got several hundred movies, videos, and a lot of them have to do with teaching, so I'll still get that first question. But then, especially people who know me longer, it's always boggles my mind when I see, wow, this person has followed the channel, because you can see that now for X number of years. It's awesome. That's what I really want to do. I want to awaken in people that they should really not just pursue a thing that provides them with subsistence, with a living, but that in going that step further, in searching out that thing that really makes them come alive, to borrow a quote, that I'll have played a far more important role in what it is that I can do for the audience, the people who are checking out whatever it is that I make. And I thought, okay, well, that's awesome. And then I thought that was kind of a central point. It's the human element that we're discussing here. But I went on to consider that for like just all the other elements of my channel, where I thought, not that I've grown entirely stagnant. There's been things that I've enjoyed, but I think about how much time I'd spent before on tutorials where I haven't. I've downloaded Black Magic or whatever it's called for that very, very good color grading software that so many people use now. It's going to kill me that I don't know. It's like, I keep thinking of Leonardo DiCaprio. No, it's DaVinci Resolve. That's the connection there. And it was exciting to me because I realized that, sure, I'd been somewhat swept up in a tide of life. That's what happens, is you can have so many things that demand your attention that they stop an objective assessment of whether or not it really is that you're moving towards things, or that you're just putting out the fires of life. That's what it is too. And I think that's where I would have compassion as well for, you don't need to berate somebody. You don't need to berate yourself if you end up in a situation where you feel like, how did I end up here? How did I end up so stagnant and so vaguely satisfied? Well, life happens. But of course, once we realize that, or we should be constantly asking that question, if we entered into this kind of fugue state, this malaise of intention, that you address it again. And it's always worth addressing because it's so much more satisfying. As I said, it's hard to quantify the significance of feeling utterly involved, utterly alive, utterly aware of why it is that you're doing something. When I go to the gym and I really know why I'm doing it, I really connect with, like, I'm going to be jacked and swole and all these sort of, face value things, but I'm going to have a sharp mind. I'm going to have more energy. That's when you get really caught up, right? You're really into it because you're really considering all these different ways that you're participating in that experience. And I think it's in most jobs, but speaking to my experience, it's especially important with creativity because it keeps you out of, there's a massive temptation to doing the sort of thing that I do, which is to become drunk on analytics, drunk on numbers, drunk on comparisons, and it will make you petty. It will make you small. It'll stop you from seeing the beauty in other people's creations because you'll become covetous and jealous of anything else that somebody made, which because of your insecurities, you think, you were either deserving of the attention that they got or that they're really not that good, and the green-eyed monster, essentially. Whereas if you ask what you're doing, if you really, really own it, then all of that fades away. You'll hear successful artists, and I don't think speak in pure platitudes about how important it is that when you're doing something, you're doing it because that thing is what fulfills you, not the analytic, that light bulb of dopamine that spikes whenever you see people consume. There is, of course, a relationship with the exposure of an audience to what you create, the work that you produce at your day job, that kind of thing. You always because you're a part of a whole, the internal and external world. You're indivisible from each other. You really are kind of the same thing. We go down, that's a whole different road to go down. But I'm not saying that but that you're always falling somewhere in between. And the best relationship I think enjoyed with an audience is one where you cared about first what you were doing, and then when it's genuinely brought to the people that you'd like to know what their experience is of it, you'll get the best response. So it's also in your interest in that way. So I was doing that more and more, and I wonder when you sit there, like, is this a kick for you? Like, because I think as well, I find this so interesting, is that we can become so automated without realizing it. We can have our lives living us as opposed to us living our lives so easily without noticing that it's happening. And that's why it's another incredible thing to take stock of, because you're like, wow, it's one of these matrix moments where you're like waking up out of the machine and you can't believe how firmly lost you were in thought or depression, or being satisfied with a bare minimal effort, or basically staking out efforts that kept away the accountability of that more serious, that more concerted and purposeful exertion. I would have a compassion as well, because usually assessing these things, asking these hard questions of our behavior and our direction, is usually retreated from, not only, as I say, that you can get knocked off balance by life, but because it is moving against entropy. It's moving against the first order of entropy. Us putting things together is moving in opposition to that other fundamental force, that things all fall apart. And so, again, adding to the likelihood that you might find yourself in that rut, because that is the natural order of the universe, that when you clean your room, it becomes dirty. When you go to work, homework accumulates. When you aspire to do something more, there's a greater mountain to climb to get to the other side of it. It's a totally relational transaction between how hard it is to stay in this flow, in this purposeful state, but at the cost of expending our energy to do so. But yeah, I was really enjoying that, because it woke me up. That was a great way to put it. It was like you got those, like, whatever, those sniffing salts, and I was like, oh, what is the channel? What is your relationship with the people who are going to watch this podcast? Why? Why is, what is the chick's name from Infinity War? I'll do you one better. Why is Amira, or whatever her name is? Batista, fantastic. Really humorous guy. I look forward to more of his work. He's really wonderful. Yeah, so that was something I was considering. I don't have it beyond those things. This was on a whim from a moment, like as I was kind of setting up and considering what it was that I would talk to you about. I thought, hey, you know what? That's one that now, as I'm on this track, I'm actually really, really excited to share. Aside from that, well, what do we get into now? Well, I've been doing this project, this will be interesting. Yeah, it'll come out after this. And in fact, I'll record it after this. And I wonder if you'll find it interesting, where there's an application. I did this there's a patron dedicated podcast that talked about this a little bit, but I saw one of my friends, really creative guy, like does cinematography for a living in Kyoto. And he did this challenge with his camera that was like, take 1 second of footage a day, and then this app then renders this all together. And I thought, wouldn't that be kind of cool to do just generally for a day-to-day life? Now, I like doing vlogs, and the most recent one, going to the gym, was awesome. That was like really getting out of my comfort zone. But I thought, what's something else novel and interesting that people might enjoy? And what I've been doing is, day to day, I record 30 seconds. And as quickly as possible, I recap everything that I've been through. And that's what I'm working on. And I think I wonder what that'll look like, because obviously it's still on my other memory card right now. once I'm completed, because like what sort of emotion will that convey? I know some really interesting videos that I've watched before were of people traveling and they take a picture of themselves every day. So this is just slightly more, but so significantly less, more than the photography style, but significantly less than any sort of video vlog style thing. I can't say I've coined this or I'm like the originator of this. I wonder. I could easily have searched it out on YouTube to find. I hope there's some originality left in it because I don't see a lot of people doing it. And I'm really, really curious. That was a creative idea I had, and I think it'll be fun to complete soon. It's going to be a very, very interesting summer break. I wonder what your summer break is going to be like. Feel free to share in the comments. I'll cheer you on down below. If you're here on the channel checking this out with me. But I had a few things going on, and it's actually it's broke my heart, but I'm resolutely determined to not despair at life's ups and downs. And it was to go to Kyoto this summer holiday, and it was to see Drew, because he's in like kind of the long launch of his Garden Lab project there, which is restoring machiyas, these beautiful traditional buildings, but it's fallen through. So I find myself in the bizarre position where I'll be here in Japan for another summer, and I'll have about, 8th to the 15th off. And so I'd like to do something interesting, but it'll be totally up to me. I don't have a lot of friends who live locally. I see it as a great opportunity, though. I mean, I love the line that this is not originally written by them, but Immodest Mouse, the good times are killing me. And it's true that we so often get on our breaks and we are so determined to relax that we end up relaxing way too hard. And that relaxing is quite the opposite. So you'll drink so much that you just end up with this series of like world record hangovers 3 times in a row. Whatever else, staying up super late so you never get any sleep, and then song as old as time, you return to work and you are super burnt out from your holiday. So I thought this is really an opportunity. I've already thought of things I would do where, no, I've not had a chance to get into Tokyo. I don't think I would go into Tokyo with the state of things currently, but I could. There's this beautiful mountain nearby, and I want to like defy in my head again this sort of fear that I have where I'm like, it's just you on another nature walk, Dave. And some people find that kind of interesting, but it's not got the moment to moment in your face excitement and pacing that people need to be engaged with what you're creating, and to, in this case, take some sort of beauty or entertainment out of it. But then I thought, shut the fuck up, stop being a little bitch. And I thought, get out there. I'm revealing the Canadianness here. Get out and go to the mountain and painstakingly create something awesome. And I know this to be true. Maybe this can relate back to what I'm talking about at the beginning of the podcast, where it's like, think purposefully, act purposefully. When you go out and you want to do something exceptional, make the point of doing things that are just that. Don't expect them to happen. There is some serendipity in filming and going out and making things, and that's cool, but they happen with purpose. Sometimes they don't, and that's a beauty of art, but they more often happen when when we take intention into account with what it is that we're doing. So look far more interested with a far more laser focused interest at the landscape for cool framing. Think of how I could come in and out of the frame in an interesting way. Think of all these tutorial videos you've watched for in-camera transitions that would make the experience of taking people to see this beautiful place so much more interesting, so much more engaging for you. So what I'm talking about here is that I'm really going to embrace that this summer holiday, I don't know if it'd be 1 or if it'd be 2 or maybe 3, but to create one step at a time, but create at least one very, very ambitious video. And who cares the location that it exists in? I saw a video recently on YouTube that was like how to make what might seem like boring filming settings more interesting. Like discipline is the mother of invention, that's perhaps not the exact quote, but limitation is often the mother of invention. So if you're going to go to a place that seems harder to make cool, then that's probably going to lead to some of the most creative stuff you've ever done. And I'm really trying to go with that approach. And so I'm excited for it as well. I've got a few days left at my school of kind of basic things here. We're now kind of into like, we would not normally have school in session, but school is in session, at least for the remainder of this week. And to do well in that is fine and good, and I will. But then to think about, sure, you're not going anywhere, but hope and opportunity and creativity springs eternal. I think there is ever and always a limitless and infinite number of awesome ideas and incredible things waiting to be created. It is the worst kind of delusion that happens all the time because it's an easy out to think, oh, all the coolest stuff has been done. I only live in a kind of uninteresting area. I don't have the equipment. I don't have the know-how, whatever it may be, whatever excuse you want to set for yourself. I thought it was so cool. I'll end on this note before we'll go into the second half, and we'll get into those questions. Write me at davetrippin@gmail.com to have your questions answered. This guy that I respect so much, his name's Christian Matt Grab. I've learned a ton from him, so much of my film techniques, rendering, all this stuff. And it was cool to me where I thought, man, I love his photography and I love so much of it as nature. And like I've got some of his LUTs I had before my computer crashed. I probably pick up another pack. I like him so much. He's one of the few artists that I actually would buy a LUT pack from. LUT pack being like color filter that you can do after you've like done color grading and color correction on your film, for anybody not familiar with that term. I thought all of his work was so original, and I always thought, what is he doing that creates such originality in his work? And I love it. And then one day he posted one new photograph, and he kind of wrote, he said that since he lived in the countryside, now bear in mind this guy makes incredible stuff, 250,000 subs, like the works, he's doing super well, but he was lamenting that he lived in the countryside and he felt like he was taking pictures of all the sort of samey shit, and that he lacked originality because he lived in the countryside. And it showed me how deluded we are with our insecurities, when the whole time it's because he was in the countryside that I thought that he was more original than other people. So often that thing you think is holding you back is actually in your benefit, and also reassuring to know, like I have people say, like, because I try to be genuine to speak to you here, they say that what they enjoy is to feel like there's some commiseration, that there's some familiarity and identifying truly with what's happening here on the channel. It feels real to them. All right, so let's jump into those questions. The first individual that we're going to chat with here this evening is Liam. This is Liam, longtime viewer from the UK. Cool. Thanks for writing in, Liam. I'm interested to live abroad at some point in the future. Making words, I usually do. Possibly Japan. That said, I wouldn't be looking for a teaching role. I have a degree and 8 years experience in digital marketing for global businesses. Well, that's pretty cool. What advice would you give someone who wants to learn Japanese from scratch? What's the best way / resource to get started? And to what level would be satisfactory to secure a role of work for myself? Is it prohibitively hard for a foreigner to succeed outside of teaching? Absolutely not, Liam. It's totally conceivable. I know a number of people doing it, so you could absolutely join their ranks. So for Japanese, let's get that out of the way first, obviously. So for Japanese, I think great ones to start with are Mina no Nihongo 1 and 2. That's awesome. And I really do find that our passion, our interest can dictate success. And so while creating a sort of guided core for yourself, go for those kind of like basic grammar books, study with consistency. That's the other thing I would say, but embrace the interest. And what I mean to say with that is that if you find that, well, what if I could do this? Like innovate, well, what if I read comics? What if I listen to music? Other than to study, to challenge yourself to actually apply and to be continuous with what it is that you're doing. Creatively engaging so that you keep it fresh and interesting, I think, is one of the most important things that you can do so that you don't stagnate. Whereas if you just study from one book all the time, that same book, you get really bored and you get really burnt out. And too long of a break is the anathema of all success that you're going to have with the language. So find ways that you get really involved. I mean, what is her name? There's this black girl. She's awesome. Like, I haven't watched a bunch of her videos. She's done so well through the years. Seems like a really lovely personality. One of these, she's almost to me like, obviously not to her fans. She's almost like like me, except successful. What I mean to say there is, like, not at the absolute mainstream, not in the limelight, but does so well. And I've always gotten such a good vibe from her personality. Her name is Kemushi-chan, I think. So I bring her up to give an example of somebody that you could maybe, if you find YouTubers who specialize in the language, use those. Use all the resources that you can possibly imagine and engage creatively with your process of learning while maintaining core principles. So beyond that, talking about digital marketing, you absolutely get into that. And I'd add a footnote to this as well, which would likely be added if I don't mention it from somebody in the comments, that you actually, I mean, you should learn the language, and this is great, and you should approach it in all these ways, but actually people with that much marketing experience in Japan, actually outside of teaching is where you start to see, not that you necessarily need it in teaching unless you go higher, but outside of teaching, there's a lot more leeway in terms of absolutely having to have Japanese. There's tons of jobs. If you're bilingual, wow, the doors, they all fly open. But tons of people are getting jobs in IT that do not require that they would have any sort of mastery of the language. So there's one for you. I hope that's a help. Cool. We got one from Karen here. I can't remember the exact demographic split of my audience, but hey, a girl. Oh, this is cool. Especially I like it when people are younger, because I'm like, oh, connecting with the next generation. That's really, really cool. And also because I'm in for the long game, the infinite game here, like that excellent book from Simon Sinek, The Infinite Game. I love when people write me, they're in high school, and then they graduate university. I've had people like this, and they're like, I made it, I graduated, and I'm coming over to Japan. That's cool. Little tangent from me to fill you in on why I like this kind of thing. I'm in 12th grade, and I live in India. Very cool. I've been planning to get my hands on teaching. I'm interested to do so. In Japan, after my 12th, I have planned to study a bachelor degree of English in Canada. Good choice. Go to UBC. Oh, man. Good, amazing memories at university there for me. I wanted to have your views and suggestions on this and what would be my next step for becoming a successful teacher in Japan after my degree. Please reply so I can start my journey. I think, this is more than anything a fun email to answer than it's any pressing problems, obviously, for Karen. Any degree is accepted. Your country speaks English. We're going to get the, something boso. I can't remember those bike guys. Just children. Or maybe the mic won't pick it up. We'll see. The degree won't matter, although I will say this. You could teach in Japan with any degree. You just need the degree. So if you feel any sort of inkling towards, maybe teaching would be cool, but this would be also awesome to do as well, I say go with that feeling, because you can likely teach anyways, and you could pick up perhaps another certification along the way if you want to go to the higher levels of teaching, but to give yourself the added flexibility of, hey, last guy was digital marketing. I actually really like digital marketing, but I could see myself teaching. There's a Jet that I hang out with here. She's got a great accent. She's from Britain, and she's a graphic artist. So she's over here doing the Jet thing, and then can very likely go into graphic design. Dun, dun, dun. So you got lots of options there, Karen. Go for it. That's my thoughts. Go for it. Okay, queries. Getting some cool names here. Oh, another person from India. Okay. This is Pradnya, here from India. Actually have a few quarries. You had mentioned in your video that if you have a master's degree, you can secure a teaching job in a university which can give you more money. Yes, that's true. I wanted to ask if any master's is okay or if a specific one is required. I think there are some university positions that you will find where you could get them without having a background in, say, TESOL or linguistics. You could, but those are the ones that I think that will absolutely guarantee land you one. So I wouldn't go hard in one direction. I think if it makes sense that you want to teach, well, then do the linguistics thing, because that's going to guarantee you a role of your desired position. But don't feel compelled that if you're going to do a master's, but you're like, oh, I always wanted to do this master's, but will that prevent me from getting into a university? I would still do the master's of your interest. Absolutely. So those are my thoughts for you, Pradnya. Cool name. Okay. This is good. We got here. Okay. This is a question for the Interstice. This is from T. This is from Robinson. This is from Tom. Not saying where he's from. That's okay. I'd love to know your experience with insects in Japan, more specifically the suze, I guess suze would be like the suzembachi, mukade, cockroach, and huntsman spider. Many thanks. Loving the content. Right on. So my experience, I'm like quite countryside-y in the one that I'm in right now, and I have a couple nights on my walls downstairs because it's a 2-story apartment I'm in now. On my wall have been these big-ass centipede, evil-looking sons of bitches. So that's not been fun, because I think what's to stop that from coming through? I think it's through the aircon that they get into the house. What's to stop that from crawling over my face as I sleep? I don't know why they've gotten in the bottom and not the top, but I'm not a fan of that. So who knows what I would trade were I in the city as opposed to the countryside in terms of wildlife that's going to rock my world at some point. The other things, though, cockroaches, maybe seen a few. Huntsman spider, never at all. Things have been pretty fine. Of course, it's maddening when you get the classic is it comes to summer and you get all these mosquitoes. And I used to live in a Leo palace, and it would be that thing, where it's like when you're trying to sleep at night and you end up just smashing yourself in the side of the face like 8 times, never actually succeeding in killing the thing, coming to the conclusion that it must be sentient to want to cause you this much misery. Mosquitoes, definitely my most annoying experience with insects here in Japan, for sure, keeping me awake. All right, what do we got next? We got Jesse. Okay, cool. We could do a little background. That'd be cool. All right, yeah, just says please use only my first name. That's another thing, too. I said in the podcast, if you want to write me and have some detail left out, do so, as Jesse has done here at the beginning, so I know and not leave it at the end that I have to edit it out after. All right, so quick background. I'm a northern Michigan native, practically Canada, to be honest, currently near Washington, D.C., and I lived in Tokyo for 4 years for university to get my Japanese major. That's cool, along on the language there. I moved back to the States last December to study web development, and I'm trying to use the ALT experience as a stepping stone to work in web dev in Japan. That's awesome. Really cool. I've been binging your channel. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Eventually, perhaps the watch time will get more exposure for the channel. That'd be great. As I've been progressing through the application and interview process with Interact, binging the content. That's awesome. Thank you very much. The question that drives us. I'm probably at a weird point in the application process to be asking, since my information packet was only just sent to Japan yesterday, but I'm wondering what kind of energy level or general genkiness do you have during classes? Are you much like you are on camera? That's a fantastic question. I am. I'm exactly like this. That's kind of a funny thing to think of, but I've never done the what is this? Why is this beeping at me? I've never done the super high dancing monkey kind of thing. I've always maintained this granted, when I have a captive audience and there are people in front of me, there's obviously more interplay. There's back and forth. The kids who can handle it, I tease them a little to keep them awake. I like to not necessarily crack jokes. It's like crack energy, because there can't be that level of communication. Ultimately, it ends up being like a joke. The approach that I've taken, not the class itself. But yeah, I 100% genuine, because kids are like bloodhounds. And if you are disingenuous in front of the class, they'll read that in a heartbeat, and you'll lose kids so quickly. As well, will you lose them if you're a really weak personality and you don't have any confidence? I've talked about this before. You have to be confident. You have to care about what you're doing. If you want to not have a bad time, all these things remain true. So yeah, I kind of maintain what I do here. Okay, so this is cool. Then it's this good extension here. Why I'm asking. During the seminar and example demo lessons, it seems like they wanted the most bright and bubbly personalities who wear an ear-to-ear smile 24/7, but I'm generally a lower energy, chill person. I get kind of the same vibes from you. Oh, haha. Thank you. Sure, we're chill people, you and I. And I had to dial it up for the demo lesson. Okay, so this is worth talking about. I'm confident I can be a good teacher as I am, but I guess I'm trying to better envision how I'll realistically be. This is, Jesse, you're winning like great email here. I haven't had one like this that I can really be so interested in. Not to diminish others who've written, but I'm enjoying this. So you've touched on something really important here, and that's the sort of like pageantry that is you getting hired. Absolutely, when you are in a class, being genuine matters, and I see all infinite representations of that with all the different friends that I have. I have some people who are really, really quite laid back in their day-to-day. I don't think Dean, Handsome Dean, anybody who's followed this channel for years, we joke, he in his class, I don't think he'd say otherwise. He's pretty high-strung. And it's counter like intuitive to if you met him how he is in his day-to-day, but it suits him. He is high-strung when he teaches, and he's like a career teacher. He's the real deal. So that works for him. I've seen there's a guy I know that I worked with from Uganda, and I learned a lot from him, and he was super chill. But how you are in the classroom, as I say, this compares to the pageantry of when it is that you're getting the job. I would tell people in a job where you're putting people, it's hard to impress upon people a long-term sort of personality that grows on people in a moment when you only have that small window to show it to them. Like that runs counterintuitive to a more laid-back personality type. And what they're generally looking for is something that sparks that dopamine for them where they're like, wow, this person's passionate and a real go-getter. I had an experience recently, it's my podcast, making it about me again, where I was approached by some Japanese group. They were looking for people like for a travel show in Japan, and they wanted me to audition, and I thought I had my energy pretty high, and being somewhat aware of this fact, right? And I've always despised this, like these YouTubers who look like they've done, a couple of lines, and not that they look that way, but it's so disingenuous. That's like not calling out any names, but people who put on this false energy. But maybe if I have some compassion for them, I understand why it works, because it's really contagious. People watch channels like that. People connect to that. It's not the dark side of the force. It's the overly bright. And I don't mesh well with that. It's not me, and I stay away from it because, as I say, I think an audience is a bloodhound as well. You guys would know if I was putting that on, if I wasn't actually really feeling that way. And my point was that I got out of this audition, and they wrote back to me, and they said, yeah, we're not going to go with you. You see, this is total. It's like, oh, God, it's like being rejected from a relationship. Like, you seem like a nice guy. You're really polite, but we needed more energy for this. And I was like, okay, you sons of bitches, I'll show you energy. It's another thing too, where like how much I could put maybe that on in like the right situation. I don't know. It feels like a catch-22 to me to say to someone, I can be, I have that energistic quality in me, but it shows it up in a different way that isn't in an interview setting just like turned on like that. But then maybe again, like I'm trying to advise you, professionally accept that and circumvent that drawback. If I was facing this head on, now I'm really getting what I would want to say to you, and I would say to myself, that if I wanted to succeed in that scenario, I should have objectively known that that's what they were looking for and just cranked it up to 100. Sure, maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it's not exactly how I am all the time. But usually interviews, like I say, they don't care once you get past the interview. The interview is the hardest thing. But once you get in, then they would be more accepting of the sort of genuine personality that you have because they have more time to spend with you and understand what you're actually like. But in these settings, whether you're auditioning or it is that you are going in for one of these interviews, yeah, I would crank up the Genki a little more than you might otherwise not feel totally comfortable with, because it gets your foot in the door to the point then where that won't matter anymore. But if you don't go this way, that it could get you kind of reaching a brick wall. So that was an awesome email. Okay, this is awesome. If you need any website work, hit me up. Thank you very much. This is a gold mine of awesomeness. I didn't even see this before. I'll absolutely check that out later. So cool. Okay, so this is next one. I haven't read this, but her name, Tadolf Swiftler, I was just like, for the dark humor in me, I was like, that is a fantastic name. And I know that Swiftler comments quite frequently, so thanks for finally writing in. And I always thought this was a girl. No offense, with Tadolf Swiftler, right? This is a guy. So writing in from the UK, very cool. I wonder where from in the UK. Hey Dave, hope you're doing well. Staying sane. Had a few questions. Okay, so far I'm going to college to study computer science. A lot of that going around. Very cool. Is it can act as a backup or a career opportunity in case the teaching doesn't suit me? Absolutely it can. And I plan on taking Japanese language course 4 years in Cambridge University. Yeah, that's pretty good. Continuing along. Because obviously better university means better human, right? Ha ha ha. Yes, of course. My main question is, what do I do if I graduate with a degree in Japanese? I assume I will need at least a minimum qualification in teaching to get a teaching license. Okay, shows sweet summer child. Nathan, have you not seen this on the channel? So it doesn't matter what your degree is in, so provided that you have a degree. So that it would be in Japanese, it doesn't matter. That's totally fine. Let it be in Japanese. But what I would say, I mean, it sounds like you were saying here, okay, so you're going to college, you're going to get that. So you will be equipped with this other avenue to pursue if you need to. And the whole, what do you want to call it? The whole teaching thing isn't palatable to you after you've done it for some time. Make it easier for me to get my goals. Yeah, and the teaching license is something that you could get it in your own country, which then means that you would have to specifically get like a teaching license in the UK. But the teaching licenses that you would get in Japan are ones where, say, for example, like myself, where you've ended up employed at a private school, where they would sponsor you, and then you're getting your teaching license through their assistance. So in that case as well, I only needed that I had a degree and teaching experience. I mean, you got to have some teaching experience so that they're willing to sponsor you in that context. So there you go, Tadolf. I hope that helped. Hope that gives you some foundation to know what it is that you might do. All right, next one up. This is from Omar. Hello, I really love the content. I just wanted to ask this. I'm a non-native and I want to make teaching English in Japan my career, and I want to teach and live in Japan for the rest of my life. Make a family and so on. Is that even possible? Thanks for the videos. I really love them. The time eternal honored question. So yes, it is. As a non-native speaker, is that what we had there? So basically, you can't qualify in that instance for a public school job because you need to have been need to be a native speaker, or have spent 12 years being educated in an English-speaking institution. Not something I mention as much because it's usually such an outlier, but it does exist there as an opportunity for you if that is perhaps in some rare and unique circumstance what people are actually have as their life experience. So it's totally possible for you. I'll throw out, I wonder if the recruiting agencies at Peppy Kids Club know me now for how often I've said this, but Peppy Kids Club, to the best of my knowledge, although I've recommended this for years now and I don't know how the landscape has changed, but they may hire people without degrees. It's in Ikawa. You could get in there, work for a year or so, and then you would be able to continue on to like a private school, an international school, something like that. You'd have other options at that point. So we got through all the questions, guys. You see why I say that you'll likely have your question answered on the podcast because I'll get through all of them. Granted, I had a bit of a backup before, so we've just now reached through to the other side, of things. But I'll announce now as well, I'm going to do another live stream next Saturday, Japanese Standard Time, and that should be really cool. I'm going to make it another one of these, what would you call it? It's going to be another one of these submit your photos. I will then edit the photos. We'll do a fundraiser. We got the crazy camera bodies I've been saving for. It was incredible last time. For anybody who supports me in the fundraiser there, you will get the value pack of all these phone backgrounds that I'm essentially editing from people's submissions during the live stream. And I'm going to add a little bit more fun to it this time, where people might not know that I actually have prints for sale. I'm not inviting anyone, although if they want to, they can buy my prints. But what I'm going to do is also add into that draw that if anybody donates during that live stream, wow, that's awesome, live stream, that you're essentially entered into a random raffle to receive a print from my store. I haven't decided on the exact dimensions, and anyone who is there, anyone who donates, it doesn't matter, whether it's $1.50 or whatever, is going to be entered into it. So there wasn't as well any pressure put on people to feel like, oh, it's if I were to support the channel by this amount monetarily, will I have a good chance to get entered in to win the print. So we'll be doing that next Saturday. Likely if you're in North America, that'll be your Friday. I will post the time. I have something to do Saturday morning, but it should wrap up all as well fairly quickly, I think within an hour. And then we'll get to the live stream, which should be awesome. I've had a ton of fun today. It was one of those days where it flowed, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed your questions, and I feel like we had a interesting conversation in the first half. So I wonder, perhaps on the next one that I have, it's going to be the 25th. So I thought that is quite a milestone, the 25th podcast. That's noteworthy, at least. Say it now at the tail end of this one, and then on to 50, that next milestone at that point. I'll say it one last time. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. You guys mean the world to me. Thank you very much. Please do consider supporting me there if you don't already. You guys are awesome wherever you're tuning in. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel.